Jonathan, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into leadership, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town called Potchefstroom. It's in the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal. Population size about 30,000 at most in the region. Yeah, it's more rural economy region, a bit of tourism out there. And in terms of employment, predominantly a services industry. Lots of government workers linked to schools, clinics, police stations and things like that. So a lot of public servants in that region.
And when you grow up, what was your dream career?
My dream career was to be a civil engineer. But unfortunately, the economic conditions didn't allow me to get to do my dream career. And so I landed up being a teacher because of a government bursary. And so that was my first career pathing as an educationist specializing in mathematics.
And where did you go from there?
I had a very strong community awareness within myself. And so I played an important role within the local churches. I loved working with kids. I was a superintendent of a Sunday school of 160 children. So that brought some real joy to my spirit. And of course, being a teacher, I loved working with children as well. And some of my former students have done exceptionally well. And then because of my community involvement at a young age, I used to attend the Ratepayers Association meetings. So I was reasonably conscientized about matters. And whilst I was an educationist, I became a politician at the same time. It was a great journey to be part of the transition government, both at the local and district municipality level. I served a full first term of office, and I decided not to join on the second term, and I took up a position with the Chamber of Commerce as the head of economic policy and advocacy. Thereafter, I moved in to become the COO of Trade and Investment, KwaZulu-Natal. Then I became the Director of Marketing and Sales for Sub-Saharan Africa for FCON AG, an Austrian company specializing in technology linked to the roads network, the tolling solutions, etc. And then from there, I moved on to become the CEO of SmartXchange, which is a media, information, communications, technology, electronics business incubator. And that's where I'm currently from 2002.
Now, I believe SmartXchange has grown to become the biggest incubator in the country.
Well, biggest depends how we want to define biggest. Our turnover is exceptionally great. We've had one company listed on the stock exchange and quite a few graduated companies. But the accolades, I think, are quite phenomenal. In 2016, we won an innovation award from the Department of National Science and Technology. The World Bank has recognized us as one of the best incubators in terms of replication. Then we've got numerous GovTech awards from the province. So we're quite blessed. But these awards are not my awards. The awards emanate from the great work produced by the startup companies within the incubator.
And can you tell us who or what were your sources of inspiration throughout your career?
My sources of inspiration is more a philosophical one. Is to try and do good, leave a legacy, and make sure the people's lives improve. So if you leave the right kind of legacy and you can measure the impacts of it, that's what kind of drives me. And of course, I did mention the point working with children, but now I'm working with youth, which is a greater pleasure because the youth are extremely dynamic and they're highly capable as well, and they're very disruptive. So we need to turn that disruptiveness into creative solutions. And that's the pleasure I enjoy, although I'm reasonably gray on the head, but at heart I'm reasonably young, working with these youth. And I find that an inspiration, and every day is an exciting day in the workspace that I currently find myself in.
Now, looking back at your career, what would you say there was a major turning point?
Yeah, definitely there was a major turning point when we reached our democracy in the country, because that actually opened doors for me. Without the new democracy, I wouldn't have had these opportunities that I currently had. And that's the fact of the life. But the challenges that we face now, I see them as great opportunities in the new phase of my life now, working with disruptive innovation technologies.
So, Jonathan, let's talk about leadership. What does the future of leadership mean to you?
The future leadership, in my opinion, is based on a great set of values. And these values may differ from people to people, but when I say a great value system, it must be a value system that's highly principled. It must be associated with great governance and the simplicity of leadership style. And in talking about a leadership style, it's about taking people along the journey that you want to get to. And in my opinion, those kind of value systems where you have empathy with people and you want to capacitate them on the journey path and get support as well from them are part of good components of a good leadership system. And if your leadership system is not one that leads with an example and is not exemplary, then there's a problem. But as humans, we do make errors, but that's the boldness of leadership that shines when you make the error. One needs to be bold enough to say, listen, guys, we've slipped up here, or I've slipped up here, I've made an error, and you correct it. And you'll be amazed of how much of respect one would get and the kudos one would get when one recognizes the error and self-corrects. When one self-corrects, there's something different about the process. Rather than others wanting to correct you, it takes a great leader, in my opinion, who says, listen, I've done something wrong. Here's my apology, and this is how we correct things. And in correcting things, you must make sure that your impact is tenfold bigger. So the so-called repentance for the error is much more appreciated.
Now, Jonathan, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider really important for building future leaders?
From my own journey, it's about being a great listener and about having a visionary outlook on issues. I always saw challenges as golden opportunities for making a difference. After all, in life, if you analyze life, it's the problem solvers in life that leave a legacy behind. Whether it's a medical challenge that you have, you need a problem solver to solve the medical challenge, that individual will leave an impact on your life when that medical challenge is solved. Whether it's a financial challenge, the banker, the angel investor, the venture capitalist is the problem solver, and he leaves a legacy in your life. Whether it's a problem solver on service delivery on government matters, it is those problem solvers that would leave a legacy in life. So, hence, I love problems, because it gives us an opportunity to put our best foot forward and help to leave a legacy.
Now, when you speak to your innovators, those aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them they should focus on for building a future-proof career?
Number one is to build on the passion. Give me anyone with passion. I've got 95% of a winner. Number two, give it your 100+ commitment, not 100%. You have to go the extra mile. And there's many incidents that could show the commitment of the extra mile. Number 3, don't lose focus. Keep on focusing. Number 4, don't lose hope when there's failures. Look at the failures as an obstacle, as a challenge, would give you the new opportunity. Take great lessons from the failure, because you'll be surprised how much more it empowers you. Again, I repeat, don't forget the great value system. You want to deal with people that have a good value system, then you're comforted in terms of how you negotiate the business transactions, how you do further referrals as well. And I always have the strong point of pushing the point of having faith in God. Faith in God goes a long way in terms of helping you get your materialistic visions sorted out. And imagine what a powerful solution you have when your materialistic visions are sorted out, compounded with the success in terms of your spiritual vision. You get a real big bang. I'm not sure what's the word to describe it, but you really get a big bang ego blast. And you're well endowed, both from a spiritual perspective, from the job perspective, and ultimately the financial perspective as well. And that's the beauty of life, is to get well endowed individuals. Individuals that will ultimately, with their solutions, leave an impact so people's lives are bettered. That's the message I spread to my startup companies. What kind of legacy you want to leave behind? And very few people can leave that legacy. And therefore, when you have this chosen group that you work with, they're handpicked. You have to nurture them in the correct manner because you want them to leave the legacy. You want to be associated with that legacy. So when you move on in life, you know you've actually done something meaningful to communities.
Now, Jonathan, you're leading innovation in the field of ICT and media. So what are the tools of technology that you envisage will drive the leadership of the future?
It's an interesting question you talk about there, Nick, because initially, I wouldn't say initially, sorry, I must correct myself there. About 3 years ago, I took a step back within the incubator and I said, things are getting a bit boring. Because we had a lot of support companies, resellers, programmers, etc., but very few innovators. And then I did some research, and I was convinced that the incubator had to focus on a vertical. And SmartXchange selected the vertical of the Smart African City. So we're packaging programs around the Smart African City, but I'll park that for now. The next challenge I realized when I put out requests for proposals on innovation, linked to a grant fund of R500,000 per innovation, thanks to the support of TIA, a arm of the Department of Science and Technology. They were my strategic partner on the innovation grant side. I realized that the quality of innovation was weak. On average, I'll get in about 30 applicants, we'll shortlist about 10, and only 3 passed the final stage. It wasn't a good story to tell. Then we realized that we need to take a step back and capacitate people to think very differently and to run a few workshops as well so that they understand what we're looking at in terms of innovation submissions. That leads me to the point of the new wave of design thinking. And that's where we want to strongly push the agenda of workshops on design thinking, looking at problem solving that would lead to solutions to develop a smart African city. Now, why the smart African city? Again, it's driven by a need. when you analyze the civil disobedient protests over the last 3 years, there was nothing under 5,000 protests, all linked to poor service delivery. So it means we've got a challenge. So if we unpack each challenge using design thinking as a methodology and a tool, we convince we'll find powerful, innovative solutions that will disrupt spheres of government, that would leave a great legacy wherein we'd see people's lives improve.
Now, Jonathan, can you maybe share a success story or two about your innovators where they really took your message to heart and went out to come up with a great solution to a great problem that made the difference?
I'll talk about the eMama one, which is an innovation addressing the challenge of pregnancy in rural communities, where the mother has a challenge to access medical facilities. Yes, there are rural clinics. At times they are far to reach, but many times they're not adequately resourced. There's some challenges in terms of personnel as well. So this kind of technology is a kit that's given out to rural women that tests the viral issues, and the solutions are downloaded, and then they get an immediate response in terms of their medical condition.
Right.
The second solution is linked to an energy reducing solution called HAVAC, and that solution actually is getting an international award as we speak in the US. Got great traction, and we convinced that this individual is going to be the next listed company with his solution. The third one that I'd like to focus on is a solution on the management of beehives. Now, we know one of the challenges that China is facing with the death of the bee communities. And it affects the future life on pollination, etc., food production. So this solution is an amazing one that does not interfere with the hive, but tells you when to harvest the honey, gives you temperature recordings, the quality of the hive, etc. And this kind of innovation has the capacity to globally manage honey production and to also manage rural startup community farms in rural areas, creating more jobs as well. So it's another great project that's coming out of SmartXchange. Another good project is linked to a smart card solution in terms of as a forerunner to the National Health Plan, where your smart card will book your interviews with your specialists, with your hospitals, all your medical details are on it, etc. Now, these companies, by the way, are going to the JTEX at Dubai on the 7th to the 13th to exhibit as well. They were exhibiting in Gallagher State last week. 7 of them actually were here under the auspices of National Science and Technology as well. To date, the incubator has funded 19 innovations, 7 of which are in the commercialization stage, and 12 of which are still in the developmental phase. So we're quite excited over the past 3 years to get that amount of traction, but we're now trying to raise the bar by focusing exclusively now in terms of a smart African city.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the future does hold for SmartXchange?
The future for SmartXchange, I think, is very promising. Fortunately, word of mouth and our good news stories creates a demand for SmartXchange. Currently, we Durban-based with a lovely satellite office in Port Shepstone that's doing exceptionally well. And the news got around that there's a replication model that's doing exceptionally well. So we now have got a request from the Msunduzi municipality that's in Pietermaritzburg to partner a similar project in Pietermaritzburg. We then have a request from the Richards Bay Special Economic Zone to start the technology hub in the Special Economic Zone, but not only focusing on ICT, looking at a technology hub. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. And we're excited that people are approaching us to say, can't we help in the startup of those facilities? We've also had a request from the Vodacom Innovator Trust to partner them on their journeys as well. So there's great traction coming, but of course we'll have to remodel ourselves as well. Because for us to stretch out so far with the limited resources clearly means a remodeling of the organization. And again, it's a challenge, but again, I say, an exciting time, a great opportunity. So it gives me more adrenaline, more excitement, keeps me a bit more youthful, and keeps me out of mischief.
Now, Jonathan, when you speak to your innovators, are there any role models of leadership, or maybe books about leadership, that you recommend they should study and learn from?
There's a book that we endorsed by yours faithfully, Dr. Nick.
Thank you.
Called Disruptive Innovation. Now, the beauty of that book, Dr. Nick, is that it brings innovation home. And that's very important. When innovators are able to associate and don't think that this is a dream issue, it becomes a reality. And when they look at the history, the manner in which you unpacked the King Shaka's innovation, it immediately gives a softer note within the spirit of the individual. And remember, the youth that we're working with are predominantly black youth. And in KwaZulu-Natal, I mean, King Shaka is a legend. And so there's an immediate association, and there's also a wow factor that, my God, innovation happened right here. I knew about it, but I didn't see it as innovation. But now suddenly the individual begins to rethink the thought processes and becomes more creative and uses those techniques and begins to question matters and say, how can I be disruptive? How can I change things? Why are you still doing it in that manner? And that's what makes it exciting.
Now, Jonathan, where can our listeners follow you? How can they connect with you?
Now you're embarrassing me, Nick, because I just don't have enough time in my life. So social media is the right thing to do. But for one to be on social media, you have to have plenty of time. Possibly when I restructure the organization, I'm going to have the time or appoint somebody to know my thinking and to communicate to the public via the social media, which is LinkedIn and Twitter and all of these social medias and the new ones that will be coming out as well. It is imperative that one participates in those social medias. But currently, I'm rated 0 out of 10 on the social media platform simply because of the time constraint. And I know many people use time constraint as an excuse, but believe me, I'm genuine. I am battling with time. There's too many irons in the fire right now, but it's exciting, but something has to give way. Currently in my life, social media gives way. It's an issue that I have to be addressing. And I'm quite convinced in my follow-up interview, I'm hoping we'd have one, we'd look at whether Jonathan's life on social media has taken a new turn.
Okay, great. Now, last but not least, Jonathan, is there one bit of advice that you would really like to give to future leaders to take heed, to take to heart, and to implement in their own life?
Again, mine is more philosophical. My guidance to anybody is work hard, with a little bit of luck and faith in God, you've got the right formula for success. Bearing in mind my introductory remarks, if you underpin that with a great value system, no one can fault you. And I'm convinced you'll excel to the greatest heights you want to excel to.
Jonathan, thank you very much for your insights. You're an inspiration, and one of your messages that I really like is that your love of problems. So I think you're an inspiration to many innovators to start loving problems, and you're an inspiration to the field of innovation because you bring humanity. What I see in you is innovation for good, not just innovation for the sake of innovation, but innovation for the sake of humanity, if I'm right.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Nick. I suppose being trained as a mathematician, I was trained to be a problem solver, and I love the problem. And generally, I would not sleep until I crack a problem. That's my character. I'd love to crack a problem, and then I can rest, to say, well, I've done justice to it. But at times I was defeated, and it doesn't mean I didn't sleep. I did sleep as well.
So thank you for building the future. Thank you to help leading us into the future. And I very much hope to see you again in the future.
Great stuff. All the best and remain blessed.
Thank you.